Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Red Dead Redemption 2 video, we are going to be finding out what happens if Arthur tries to leave the camp in Chapter 1, when the gang is sort of stuck up in the snow on the mountain at Coulter. So this is an experiment that I have wanted to try for a good bit now. I've always been curious what would happen if Arthur went to explore the rest of the world, even when the gang was in Chapter 1. Would the game physically stop us? Would they put up some invisible wall? Would one of our other gang members stop us and make us return back to camp? Would we be free to explore the entirety of the world? What would happen? So in order to try this for yourself, if you are curious in this experiment, you need to get past the first two missions of the game. Obviously, the first mission is going to start by default, but as soon as you finish the first mission, the second one starts automatically. That's the one where you have to go rescue John. You and Javier sort of go up on that really tall mountain. And once you bring John back, you're basically allowed to free roam. It's a very simple version of free roaming, but you aren't forced into the next mission. So you are allowed to basically do whatever you want. And this is when we can basically execute our test to see if Arthur can go past the campgrounds. Now, I also learned a lot about this while I was doing this experiment. The first thing is, and I didn't know this, while you're in Coulter, Arthur doesn't have the ability to antagonize someone. He can only greet people. So all the gang members that you can talk to, whether that be Hosea or Dutch or Abigail or Reverend Swanson or any of the ladies, Karen, Tilly, Mary Beth, you can only greet them. You can't antagonize them. I guess because it wouldn't make sense, or it wouldn't be in Arthur's nature, given all the events that just transpired. And I know in Chapter 1, a lot of you guys are probably just trying to blow through it as quickly as you can to get to the main part of the game. But if you actually stop and listen to a lot of the gang members, they'll reveal some interesting information about Blackwater, what happened before that, and much more. So if you do take the time to sort of listen to them, you can actually learn a lot of stuff, which in my opinion is really cool. However, let's get on to the main experiment of today's quest. So as you guys can see here, we are in Coulter and we are clearly in Chapter 1. We have a mission from Bill Williamson that's called Old Friends, and we have a mission from Mr. Pearson called The Aftermath of Genesis. Those are the next two missions that you can choose to go on. And you can see that the rest of the map is completely blank. I can't see it at all. So I started a brand new game to try this. So what I did is I loaded up on my horse and I wanted to set off. I wanted to see just how far I could go, or if there would be an unlimited amount of time that I could go. So things seemed to be going pretty smoothly. I was basically just following the road outside of camp. However, about 5 seconds into my journey, this notification on the screen came up. The weather is harsh. Return to your camp. And immediately after that notification started happening, my horse started dying very quickly. I didn't even have the opportunity to really turn around all that fast. And then I got another notification that says, your horse has died due to harsh weather conditions. Return to camp. Wow, so the game really stops you quickly from doing anything because your horse dies in about 2 seconds. So be careful about this, because I'm sure a lot of people might try this with the intentions of thinking they're free to do whatever they want. And if you don't have those really quick reaction times, you're going to be in trouble. So that's something to keep in mind right there. Just be careful. Your horse does die very, very quickly if you do experiment with this. And as I'm sure you guys have noticed, Arthur's health and stamina is starting to deteriorate as well. I don't know what the rate is, but it's continuing to go down. Now, this was a lot easier to keep Arthur alive because I could just keep eating provisions over and over and over again. But there's only so many of those that you have. So eventually you will run out and you eventually won't be able to make it any further. Now, I was able to make it to about this point on the map, sort of the intersection in between the A and the M of Amberino. And I also noticed that there was this X on the map. So that was kind of cool. I also wanted to check out what that was. So you can see how far I've made it. I don't know how many meters that would be, 200, 300 meters, something along those lines. But we did learn something from this, is that there is no boundary that basically stops you like an invisible wall from going outside of the camp. Instead, what happens is Rockstar put in this provision that makes the weather like really, really bad. I didn't even know this. That basically drains your health over time. Now, we eventually made our way to that X on the map, and it turns out that these are the guys with the panoramic map. So although this wasn't something brand new, I didn't know you had the opportunity to collect this in Chapter 1, obviously because I had never been out exploring past the regular campgrounds. And then very quickly, as soon as I grabbed the panoramic map, I ultimately ran out of provisions to keep myself alive, and what happened is I ended up dying. So I was interested to see what would happen when I respawned, which took a while, by the way, like longer than it typically does. When I spawned into camp, I noticed that all of my cores were drained, but my horse was alive. So I don't think Rockstar punishes you, at least at this stage of the game, for traveling outside of the zone by permanently killing your horse. I guess it's because, number one, people might make that mistake often, and number two, it's not like there's a surplus of horses that you could grab, and you certainly need them for missions, so maybe that's just an oversight, maybe that's just something Rockstar tried, so you don't have to fear about losing your horse. Nothing like that is going to happen. The only thing that happens is that Arthur is going to have to like replenish his cores, and Arthur can't sleep during this time of the game. So you're going to have to rely on food or provisions or other stuff like that to regain your stamina and health core. So just something to keep in mind right there if you do end up trying this for yourself. Now, I wanted to try a few more experiments with this test. I wanted to see if it was just the particular direction that I had ended up going, ended up causing me to get hurt, or if it was every direction. And I also wanted to test the limits of how far you could go. So I just headed out in sort of a random direction to the southeast, and I wanted to see, how far I could go without taking damage. And I started taking damage, and I immediately whipped back around because I didn't want my horse to die. And if we take a look at the map, you can see that right outside of that little circle, you can kind of see how Coulter has like that road that runs to the center, and then that big loop that sort of goes around like the stream. Basically, as soon as you get outside of that, that's the sort of zone in which you'll start to take damage in. But if you're inside of that, you will actually be safe. So if you're wondering what your threshold was, well, that seems to be about it. And this also sort of confirmed that no matter what direction you head, you will take damage from the storm. Now, just to confirm this, I also wanted to head north to see if going up the stream where I'd already visited with someone like Javier Escuela to rescue John, would this also trigger the storm that comes in? And the answer to that is yes. The storm also comes in no matter what direction you're heading. So it's a little bit unfortunate, but we did learn a lot. The first thing we learned is that there is no like stop wall that prevents you from going basically anywhere. So for example, in other Rockstar games like Grand Theft Auto 4 and Vice City, there will be like some in-game excuse that prevents you from going to the other parts of the map, whether it's a police blockade or like hurricane damage, like where you physically can't get to the other parts of the map. Whereas in Red Dead Redemption 2, you technically could, as long as you had enough provisions and health supplies to keep healing yourself over and over and over again. But there would be a consistent storm that would keep you basically getting damaged. Now, what would be interesting is if you had enough provisions to make it down the mountain to a place like Valentine where it doesn't snow, like what harsh weather would take over? That might be an experiment for another day, especially if I decide to use cheat codes, because that would be the only way to generate enough provisions to keep yourself alive. But also, number two, the game doesn't want you to go to any of these spots just quite yet. And the final experiment I tried with this is it doesn't seem as if anyone from the gang recognizes the fact that you tried to run away. Like, for example, Hosea and Dutch won't say like, why'd you go out in that snowstorm, Arthur? You should have known better. They don't say any lines of dialogue like that. That would have been pretty cool. They just sort of give you like the normal talk that the gang is supposed to have with you in Coulter. So as always, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments down below. If you have any other experiments or things you want me to try that are similarly related to this, you can let me know in the comments down below or reach out to me on my Facebook page. I'd love to hear from you guys down there. If you did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new or you like daily Red Dead Redemption 2 videos like this. With all the way, guys, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.